The boat cuts through the black water of San Francisco Bay, its engine humming low, almost respectfully, as if it knows where it's going. Ahead, Alcatraz rises from the fog like a clenched fist, stone, steel, and silence. Even before your feet touch the island, the air feels different, colder, heavier. This place was never meant to welcome anyone. Opened in 1934, Alcatraz was built to erase hope, to break the most dangerous minds by locking them away from the world and, slowly, from themselves. As you walk through the main cell house, every footstep echoes too loudly. The corridors stretch on like endless veins, lined with narrow cells, where men once stared at concrete walls for years. Brutal isolation was not a punishment here. It was a philosophy. Prisoners could hear laughter drifting from San Francisco on clear nights, could smell food from the mainland, yet never reach it. That cruelty soaked into the walls, and some say it awakened things that were never human to begin with. In old folklore, Jinn are spirits drawn to suffering, to abandoned places heavy with emotion. If that is true, Alcatraz would have been a beacon. Guards spoke quietly about the sounds. Not during the day, not when the sun washed the island in pale gold, but at night, crying from empty cells. Whispers sliding down the corridors like breath on glass. Some said it sounded like men begging. Others swore it was something older, something mocking the pain that once lived there. One guard reported hearing a scream, so sharp it froze him in place. When he rushed to the cell, it was empty. The air inside unnaturally cold, as if life itself had fled seconds earlier. CellBlockD, the punishment wing, carries a different kind of darkness. This was where prisoners were sent to disappear into silence. The infamous solitary cells were designed to strip away time, sound, and sanity. In one cell, known as the hole, prisoners sat in near total darkness for days. Visitors today say the temperature drops suddenly there, even in summer. Some feel watched. Others describe a pressure on the chest, as if an unseen presence is standing inches away. Ghosts, some believe. Jinn. Others whisper, beings unseen, feeding on despair, bound to the island by suffering too deep to fade. The continuity of Alcatraz's story is what makes it so unsettling. The prison closed in 1963, but the silence never left. When the last inmates departed, something else stayed behind. The sounds continued. Tourists reported footsteps pacing beside them when no one was there. Children pointed at corners, asking who the man was standing there. Cameras malfunctioned. Batteries drained. And always that cold, appearing suddenly, vanishing just as fast, like a breath from another world brushing against the living. At night, when fog wraps the island and the bay goes still, Alcatraz feels awake. Some claim to hear metal doors clanging shut, the echo of routines long abandoned. Others swear they hear chanting, low and rhythmic, not in English, not in any language they recognize. In many traditions, Jinn are said to speak in tones that feel more than they sound, vibrating through the body instead of the ears. Those who experience it leave shaken, unable to explain why their hearts race. Long after they return to the mainland, Alcatraz is famous worldwide, not just because it held notorious criminals, but because it stands as a reminder that places remember. Pain leaves fingerprints. Fear seeps into stone. Whether you believe in ghosts, Jinn, or something else entirely, the island does not let you remain neutral. It watches, it listens. And as the boat pulls away, the prison shrinking back into the fog, there's a lingering sense that something on that island is still counting footsteps, still waiting for the sound of keys, still whispering through the cold air of its endless cells. When Alcatraz Prison opened its iron jaws in 1934, it was not announced with screams or ceremonies, but with a quiet certainty that this place would be different from every other prison in America. The government did not send ordinary criminals here. Alcatraz was created for men who could not be controlled, men whose minds refused to bend, whose presence disrupted every wall that tried to contain them. From the very beginning, the island carried an intention darker than punishment. It was designed to isolate the soul. Surrounded by freezing waters and violent currents, escape was not just unlikely. It was meant to feel impossible. A psychological truth drilled into every inmate long before their cell door slammed shut. The cells were small, narrow, and mercilessly plain. No color to comfort the eyes, no softness to dull the edges of thought. Prisoners were locked away for up to 23 hours a day, left alone with their memories, regrets, and fears. Silence became a weapon. Time lost its meaning. Days blurred into nights, nights into endless waiting. This brutal isolation was deliberate, and over time, it transformed Alcatraz into something more than a prison. It became a pressure chamber for the human mind. Some men broke. Others hardened. And some, guards later whispered, seemed to vanish inward, as if something unseen had taken notice of their suffering. Suspense clung to daily life on the island. The sound of keys rattling down the corridor could mean food, inspection, or punishment. Every noise echoed, stretched, and lingered, refusing to die. Even after the doors closed and the lights dimmed, the air seemed restless. Guards on night duty reported feeling watched long before any stories of ghosts spread. They felt it in the stillness, in the way shadows gathered at the edges of their vision, long before anyone dared to say the word haunted. Alcatraz was already behaving like a place that remembered too much. In many ancient beliefs, Jinn, spirits made of smokeless fire, are drawn to extremes: extreme heat, extreme cold, and extreme emotion. Alcatraz offered all three. Men screamed in rage, wept in silence, prayed in desperation. That emotional weight did not simply disappear. It soaked into the walls, the floors, the iron bars. Guards later claimed that some cells felt colder than others for no logical reason, as if something unseen preferred certain corners. Continuity is what makes these stories chilling. The same cells, the same cold spots, the same unease, reported decade after decade, even after prisoners were transferred and the island supposedly emptied. Ghost stories followed naturally. Some said they heard coughing in the dark, echoing the sounds of inmates who once lay sick and broken in their cells. Others heard faint murmurs, fragments of conversations that never fully formed, like memories replaying themselves without bodies to hold them. The prison's design, meant to isolate and dominate, may have unintentionally opened doors to something else entirely. When a place is built to erase humanity, what fills the void left behind? Even during its active years, Alcatraz felt unfinished, as if it existed between worlds. Prisoners could see San Francisco's lights flickering at night, music, laughter, freedom just across the water, close enough to feel, far enough to never touch. That cruel closeness deepened the suffering, sharpening the emotional energy that many believe fuels hauntings. If ghosts are echoes of pain, and Jinn are beings drawn to imbalance, then Alcatraz was not just a prison, it was an invitation. When the prison eventually closed, the intention was to end its story. But places like Alcatraz do not end cleanly. The continuity remained. The isolation remained. And the spirits, whether ghosts of broken men or jinn bound by suffering, seemed unwilling to leave. Even today, standing in those cells, people feel the same pressure, the same cold breath of history brushing past them, reminding them that Alcatraz was never only about locking people away. It was about what happens when isolation goes so deep that it leaves something behind, something that still whispers through the silence, waiting to be heard. Long after the sun slipped behind the San Francisco skyline and the last echoes of daytime routines faded, Alcatraz revealed a different face, one that only guards and the sleepless truly came to know. Point 2 of Alcatraz's legend is not written in official reports or inked into rulebooks. It lives in whispered testimonies, shared reluctantly, often years after service ended. Guards reported unexplained sounds, crying, whispers, and sudden cold spots. And what makes these accounts unsettling is not their drama, but their consistency. The same experiences, repeated by different men, across different years, in the same narrow corridors. Night duty on Alcatraz was a test of nerve. The cell house, once loud with orders and footsteps, became an echo chamber of memory. Guards spoke of hearing soft sobbing drifting from cells that were known to be empty. At first, many dismissed it as imagination, the mind playing tricks in silence. But the sounds returned, night after night, unchanged. Not louder, not softer. As if something was repeating itself, locked into a loop of suffering that refused to move on. That continuity, those same cries at the same hours, made it impossible to ignore. Suspense grew in the pauses between sounds. A metallic clink without a source. Footsteps pacing beside a guard, matching his rhythm, then stopping when he stopped. Some described whispers sliding along the walls, too faint to understand, yet heavy enough to raise the hair on the neck. One guard claimed the whispers did not sound human at all, more like breath shaped into intent. In many traditions, jinn are said to exist alongside us, unseen, inhabiting abandoned or emotionally charged places. Alcatraz, soaked in fear and isolation, fit every description of a place such beings might linger. Cold spots were perhaps the most disturbing. Entire sections of the cell house would suddenly drop in temperature, sharp and immediate, as if the air itself recoiled. These were not drafts from the bay or shifting weather. The cold appeared in specific locations, near certain cells, especially in CellBlockD, and vanished without warning. Guards learned these places instinctively. They felt it in their bones. Some refused to linger there alone. Others felt a pressure, a presence, as if stepping into a space already occupied. Ghost stories began to circulate quietly. A guard swore he heard a prisoner screaming from a locked cell, a scream so real it triggered emergency response. When the door was opened, the cell was empty, the walls coated in frost despite the mild night. Another reported seeing a shadow pass between cells, tall and thin, dissolving when confronted by light. These were not tourists or imagination-driven visitors. These were trained men, accustomed to danger, not easily shaken. What deepened the unease was that even after Alcatraz closed, the phenomena continued. Rangers, maintenance workers, and later visitors reported the same experiences. Crying, cold, whispered words that never fully formed. The prison was supposed to be silent, yet it never truly was. Continuity again, different generations, Same encounters. The story did not reset when the prisoners left. Something stayed behind. Some believe these are ghosts, echoes of men who died mentally, if not physically, within those walls. Others suggest something older, something not bound to human death. Jinn are said to feed on despair, to be attracted to places where suffering is intense and prolonged. Alcatraz was designed to create exactly that. Whether ghost or jinn, the effect is the same: a sense that the island is not empty, only quiet, watching those who walk its halls. Suspense lives in the unanswered questions. Why do the sounds repeat? Why those cells? Why the cold? Alcatraz does not explain itself. It only presents its experiences, again and again, as if daring the living to deny them. And in that silence between footsteps, in that sudden chill brushing past the skin, many realize the truth that binds every story together. Alcatraz may no longer be a prison for the living, but it still holds something captive, something that refuses to be forgotten, something that still cries out in the dark. CellBlockD was never meant to be remembered kindly. From the moment it was designed, it existed as a warning, a shadow within a shadow, a place even hardened prisoners feared. While the rest of Alcatraz stripped men of freedom, CellBlockD stripped them of identity. This was the punishment wing, where silence was enforced not just by walls, but by darkness itself. Stepping into it even today feels like crossing an invisible threshold. As if the air thickens the deeper you go, pressing against the chest, urging you to turn back. The solitary cells inside CellBlockD were small stone boxes with iron doors, some fitted with narrow slits that allowed almost no light to pass through. Prisoners sent here were often locked away for days, sometimes weeks, in near total isolation. In one cell, infamously known as the Hole, inmates were left in complete darkness, given minimal food, and denied any sense of time. The mind, deprived of sound and sight, begins to create its own reality. Many prisoners emerged shaken, speaking of voices that called their names, shapes moving in the dark, and an overwhelming sense that they were no longer alone. Suspense lived inside those walls, stretching endlessly through the hours. Guards spoke of opening doors in CellBlockD and feeling as though something had just slipped past them, unseen but aware. Some said the silence was louder there, buzzing, alive. Even when the cells were empty, the darkness seemed occupied. Lights flickered without reason. The air felt unnaturally cold, colder than the rest of the prison, as if the stone itself resisted warmth. Visitors later reported the same chill, the same tightening in the chest, decades after the last prisoner left. Ghost stories cling to CellBlockD like a second skin. One of the most chilling tales involves a prisoner who reportedly screamed through the night, claiming a creature with glowing eyes was attacking him inside his cell. Guards, convinced he was trying to manipulate them, ignored the screams until they suddenly stopped. By morning, the man was found dead, his face frozen in terror, with no clear physical cause. Some said he died of fright. Others believed he saw something real, something not bound by bars or locks. In folklore, jinn are known to appear in darkness, often taking terrifying forms meant to instill fear. They are said to dwell in abandoned places, ruins, and sites saturated with emotional suffering. CellBlockD fits every description. The continuity of encounters, there is what disturbs the most. Different prisoners, different guards, same experiences. Eyes watching from the dark. Whispered warnings. a presence that feels intelligent, aware, and patient. Even after Alcatraz closed, CellBlockD did not fall silent. Park rangers reported hearing doors slam when no one else was inside. Tourists described being touched, shoved, or whispered to. Some cameras refused to work in certain cells, while audio recordings captured unexplained knocks and faint voices. The same cell where the screaming prisoner died is often cited as the coldest spot on the island. People linger there unwillingly, drawn by curiosity, then leave quickly, shaken and pale. The continuity is unmistakable. CellBlockD does not change with time. It does not care who enters. It responds the same way, offering the same unease, the same quiet terror. Whether these experiences are the restless ghosts of men broken by isolation or Jinn drawn to decades of suffering, the effect is undeniable. CellBlockD feels alive in a way no place should be. And as the darkness presses close, and the silence listens back, many realize that this wing was never just a place of punishment. It was a doorway, and whatever passed through, it may still be there, waiting unseen in the cold. Even after the last prisoner was transferred and the gates of Alcatraz were officially shut in 1963, the island refused to fall silent. Point 4 of its legend speaks not of the past alone, but of the unsettling present, how the same footsteps, whispers, and unseen presences continue to reveal themselves to those who walk the island today. The prison was meant to be abandoned, reduced to history and memory, yet something within its walls never accepted that ending. Suspense lingers here not as a sudden shock, but as a slow realization that time did not erase what was left behind. Visitors often describe the feeling, before they hear or see anything, a sense of being watched. A pressure in the air, like a held breath. As they move through the cell house, sounds appear without warning, soft humming, distant coughing, the faint echo of a voice calling from far down a corridor. These are not random noises, they repeat themselves. The same cell, the same hallway, the same time of day. Continuity again. Tying modern experiences to decades, old stories told by guards and inmates long gone. Tour guides sometimes pause mid-sentence, confused by the sudden drop in temperature around them. Cold spots bloom out of nowhere, sharp enough to fog breath even on warm afternoons. Instruments fail. Batteries drain. Cameras refuse to focus, as if the space itself resists being captured. People step into certain cells and feel dizzy, nauseous, overwhelmed by emotion, sadness without cause, fear without threat. Some leave in tears, unable to explain why. Others feel anger or an urge to flee. In many belief systems, Jinn are said to influence emotion, to exist just beyond perception, their presence felt rather than seen. For those who believe, Alcatraz behaves exactly like a place where such spirits linger. Ghost sightings are spoken of carefully, often dismissed at first, then quietly believed after too many similar accounts pile up. Figures seen standing inside cells, vanishing when approached. Shadows moving against the flow of light. Children pointing and asking questions no adult can answer. A woman once reported feeling a hand grip her arm in CellBlockD, only to turn and find no one there. The touch was icy, lingering long after the moment passed. These stories are not dramatic screams. They are subtle, intimate, unsettling. Park rangers and staff, people who spend long hours on the island, speak of Alcatraz differently. They talk about it as if it listens. Doors open and close on their own. Radios crackle with static, occasionally breaking into distorted voices. Footsteps follow behind them during late shifts, stopping when they stop. These are not one-time events. They happen again and again, following the same pattern, the same rhythm, as if something is replaying an old routine it never finished. The continuity between past and present is what binds all these experiences into something harder to dismiss. The same cells once feared by prisoners are now avoided by visitors. The same cold corners reported by guards are still cold today. Time moved on, people changed, but the sensations remained. If ghosts are echoes of unresolved pain, then Alcatraz is filled with them. If jinn are drawn to suffering and abandonment, then the island is a natural dwelling. Suspense grows not from what is seen, but from what is expected. Visitors enter believing they will feel nothing, and leave questioning that certainty. The island does not need to prove itself. It simply waits. Every clang of a distant door, every sudden chill, every whisper just out of reach adds another layer to its story. Alcatraz stands not only as a monument to human cruelty and endurance, but as a living reminder that some places do not let go. The prison may be closed, but whatever walks its corridors, whatever listens from the shadows, continues its sentence, unseen, unending, and very much awake. Alcatraz did not earn its worldwide reputation as a haunted island overnight. It was carved slowly, layer by layer, through stories that refused to stay buried. What makes Point 5 so powerful is not a single terrifying event, but the way the island's identity spread across oceans and cultures, carried by the same emotions of fear, isolation, and unanswered questions. From America to Europe, from Asia to the Middle East, Alcatraz is spoken of as more than a former prison. It is remembered as a place where something unseen still lingers, a place where the past does not rest. Suspense is woven into Alcatraz's global image because no one agrees on exactly what haunts it, only that something does. Some call them ghosts, the restless echoes of prisoners who lost their sanity within stone walls, men whose bodies left the island, but whose pain did not. Others speak in the language of ancient belief, calling them jinn, spirits drawn to abandoned places heavy with suffering, silence, and despair. Across cultures, the descriptions align in unsettling ways. Cold air, whispers, shadows, a feeling of being watched. Different names, same experiences. Films, books, documentaries, and whispered retellings have carried Alcatraz's story far beyond San Francisco Bay. Yet what keeps the legend alive is continuity. Every generation brings new witnesses who describe the same sensations as those before them. Tourists from opposite sides of the world, unfamiliar with each other and with no shared expectations, report identical feelings in the same locations. Fear rising in the chest for no clear reason. A sudden urge to leave a cell immediately. A sound heard but never traced. This repetition gives Alcatraz a living reputation, as if the island itself is actively participating in how it is remembered. In many traditions, jinn are said to exist alongside humanity, unseen but aware, inhabiting places humans have abandoned or corrupted. Alcatraz fits that description perfectly. Once filled with life, voices, and suffering, it was suddenly emptied, leaving behind an imbalance. Some believe such sudden abandonment invites spiritual occupation. Ghosts remain bound by memory, jinn by environment. Alcatraz offers both: memory soaked into stone, and an environment charged with emotional extremes. Suspense deepens because the island never reveals itself fully. Visitors may hear nothing, feel nothing, experience nothing unusual, and that uncertainty is part of its power. The next person, minutes later, might feel overwhelmed by cold or hear a voice whispering their name. The randomness is what makes it believable. If Alcatraz performed on command, it would be easy to dismiss. Instead, it waits, choosing moments, reinforcing the idea that whatever exists there acts with intention. The prison's global fame also feeds into the fear. When a place is known worldwide for confinement and suffering, expectations follow, but Alcatraz often exceeds them. People arrive skeptical and leave quiet. The island humbles disbelief. Even those who deny ghosts or Jinn admit that Alcatraz feels different. Heavy, watchful, as if history itself has a pulse. What truly seals Alcatraz's haunted reputation is that it never feels finished. Other prisons close and become museums. Alcatraz feels paused. The echoes of routine, the imagined clang of doors, the shuffle of footsteps, the distant cries, seem ready to resume at any moment. Continuity again. The story does not end, it loops. Across the world, Alcatraz is spoken of not just as a symbol of punishment, but as a warning. That place is shaped by cruelty. Do not simply return to neutrality. They remember. They respond. Whether the presence felt there is ghost, Jinn, or something unnamed, the island holds onto it fiercely. Alcatraz stands alone in the bay, surrounded by water that reflects the sky but hides its depths, much like the prison itself, visible, famous, studied endlessly, yet still guarding secrets that whisper through its corridors, calling softly to anyone willing to listen. And so, when we speak of Alcatraz at the end of its long and uneasy story, history itself steps forward as the final witness. In 1963, the prison closed not because it had failed, but because it had succeeded too well. Its walls had broken spirits, drained resources, and proven that isolation could punish more deeply than chains. The last prisoners were ferried away across the same cold waters that once promised escape, and officially, Alcatraz became silent. Yet history reminds us that silence does not mean absence. The island did not crumble into ruin or fade into legend. Instead, it transformed into a monument, stone and steel preserved as a warning to future generations. Alcatraz stands today as proof of an era when justice believed fear could correct human nature, when isolation was used as a tool to control the uncontrollable. Its cells remain intact, its corridors unchanged, as if time itself chose to pause there. This continuity is what makes its history so powerful. The past is not imagined here. It is physically present. From a historical lens, Alcatraz teaches us that places shaped by extreme suffering do not simply return to neutrality. Whether one believes in ghosts, Jinn, or only in the psychological echoes of trauma, the lesson remains the same. Human pain leaves marks deeper than stone. The stories that surround the island are not separate from its history. They are part of it, born from real lives, real isolation, and real despair. Alcatraz now welcomes millions as a historic site, but it does not invite forgetting. It asks visitors to remember the cost of absolute punishment, the fragility of the human mind, and the lasting consequences of cruelty wrapped in order. History closes the book on Alcatraz not with peace, but with reflection. The prison may no longer confine bodies, but it continues to hold memory, and memory, like the island itself, refuses to be erased. If this journey through history and mystery held you captive, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because some stories deserve to be remembered, and some secrets are only revealed to those who return.